Hi, Sib. Thanks for coming to the interview. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Hey Denise, thanks for having me. Super happy to be here.
Listen, you have a big milestone coming up. Tell us a little bit about it.
So, we're super happy to announce that we are going to soon launch Status Network. And what we wanted is basically to tell the community, hey, we're back. We're here to actually make something worthwhile that has not been explored before in blockchain technology, which is creating a natively gasless L2. Um, and with built-in public funding. So
Mm.
it's a lot of things. I think we'll go into details during our today's call. But yeah, the idea really is that we want to provide deep utility to our SNT token, and we thought that an L2 where the SNT is actually used as a way to secure the network against spam attacks is actually a good way to provide that type of deep utility to the token.
This is awesome. And like we talked about this pre-recording that we have a list of questions and everything, but let's just jump straight into juice because you have a lot of interesting things. We'll go back to overall overview, but I think for viewers it will be much more interesting to go back directly into the features and everything. So you mentioned the S&T token, you mentioned the public funding. So how did this idea come into the company, and what's the use case for it? What kind of apps and organizations and projects would benefit from it? And then you have a lot of other interesting features like karma, and we'll talk a little bit more about gasless transactions and spam protection and all that, but let's unfold with the beginning at least.
Yeah, definitely. So um, I think there's a deep ethos and values into the Status ecosystem and IFT in general, which include all the logos organizations, where we believe that open systems that are maximally decentralized, censorship resistant, resilient, and with a focus on privacy are actually what is going to push forward crypto and to not being just a casino, but actually provide real value to the world. And so when we started thinking about how to design that new L2, one of the main questions that kept coming back is like, what's in it for the apps? What's in it for like the builders? And so how can we make sustainable commitment to those builders that we are going to be here to support them, not just by emitting a token that is like just going to inflate away and there's some lockup and then you have to claim and some it's like it doesn't work. I mean, for builders, it's actually a stressful thing to get through versus it should be kind of built in the chain as a way to incentivize builders to come back and to stick around. Because I think this is the critical part, right?
Mm.
For most of the L2s and chains in general, you have a lot of mercenary app builders that just are going
Mm.
to come, take the grants, build on your thing, and then just leave and move on. And I think
Mm.
it's a good business model so far. It has worked for them very well. And it's actually provided value to a bunch of different L1s and L2s that have benefited from their apps, right? But it's not actually a sustainable way to build an ecosystem. You need to have people that are going to uh, continue building around what the kind of the foundational layer that you set, and that are going to continue to provide value over a long period of time. Um, and and so when you think about that on one side, and then you put on the other side the fact that we've seen that with the EF, with Vitalik's calls as well about, we need to support open source projects. We need to find like
Mm.
a way to fund it. And there has been multiple ways to think about crowdsourcing funding for apps and for open protocols. Um, and, and, um, and the main issue every time is it's either based on a single donation from like a big organization, or it's based on people actually giving money, like doing donations, like Gitcoin and so on. And every time the problem is over a long enough period of time, you don't really get that sustainability. So we kind of took both issues at the same time and we're like, all right, how can we actually align the development of a chain
Mm.
with the continuous support of everyone that is going to build on it? and at the same time with a long-term view and have that kind of stickiness and use and app builders keeping building on the same network and just not moving to multiple networks.
Mm.
Um, and so this is how we came up with that kind of idea about focusing on public funding. And public funding means multiple things, right? So it can mean um, directly app builders. So you have an app, people vote for you, and you get the funding.
Mm-hmm.
There is open protocols that are not even necessary directly on Celsius Network, but we
Mm-hmm.
know that by funding those opportunities and that research and so on, that we actually benefit the entire ecosystem, which is also the mission that we have, is to benefit
Mm.
not only the Status and SNT ecosystem, but the Ethereum ecosystem at large.
Mm.
So for example, we're in discussion right now with Protocol Guild to find a way to work together where they would get part of that public funding as a kind of
Mm.
ongoing thing and not just a single time grant or like um, a token donation that they just going to sell over a long period of time, which is also a
Yeah.
good model, right? It has
Yeah.
been working well for them, but we want to also explore other ways to do it.
Mm.
Um, and all right, so now let's get to it. Like, how does it actually work, right?
Yeah.
So the most simplest way to think about that is we are launching a gasless network, meaning we are not like the sequencer is not going to take fees,
Mm.
or very rarely on very specific type of kind of um, over allocated free transactions. So when you go over your quota of free transactions, then we need to make you pay some gas. This is just
Mm.
a spam measure, spam
Mm.
collection measure
Mm-hmm.
that most of the users shouldn't hit. So um, the idea is because the sequencer is not making any fees, we need to get some revenues from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we get them? We get them from mostly two sources. The first source is native yield, meaning so we're currently working with the Lina team to
Mm-hmm.
build an additional module to their native bridge, where people, when they deposit to the bridge, if they deposit ETH or some stablecoin like DAI or USDC or USDT, they actually get kind of the same on the L2. But what's happening is on our side, we take that deposit and we basically deposit it into Lido or Maker to
Mm.
make it simple for now.
Mm.
And then the yield is funneled to the L2, but to kind of a split contract. And that split contract is going to be managed by the governance token holders.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be able to allocate that yield to wherever they see fit.
Mm.
And to give
Okay.
you a rough order of magnitude, we as the L2 for our operation, meaning to run the sequencer, the prover, paying the L1 fees and so on, we take 30% of that total yield. The goal over time will be to reduce that take, and that will be submitted also to governance voting, right? But we want to be the thinnest layer possible. The goal is not to make a lot of profits because we know that this is not how we build a sustainable ecosystem. We build a sustainable ecosystem by rewarding everyone that is actually building on it and have very aligned incentives
Mm-hmm.
to build in the same direction. So we take that commission, and then 70% is just going straight back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of huge, right? It's like we literally say, look, 70% of all revenue that comes through our revenue streams will go to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And as of launch, that 70% is going to be divided in two. One for liquidity incentives, so basically incentivizing liquidity on the native DEX. And yeah, we'll I think talk later about the native DEX part because I think it's interesting
Yeah.
also. But so are able to reward directly liquidity poured into the network in a very kind of non-inflationary manner,
Mm.
meaning that we are not giving an extra token for people to do stuff. We are just taking our revenue and funneling them to liquidity. provision.
Let's before we go any further, let's simplify this description a little bit with an example. Let's take an example of a process that might be happening within status network and kind of explain to everybody else how it would work on a specific use case. Could you do that?
Yeah, definitely. So the
Thanks.
simplest way to see the the simplest way to see the native yield part is I come to the network, I deposit 0.1 ETH in the bridge. Um, that 0.1 ETH gets staked with Lido. And then on the network, I get 0.1 ETH, no problem. But all the extra yield, so the 3-ish% yield, gets actually redistributed to the community. And 70% of it goes to the community, right? And this is like the main stream of revenue that comes into the L2. And then the extra 40%, like the last part, is going to the public funding, literally. So this is where people can actually vote for how do I get access to that yield.
Yeah.
One thing that I think will be very interesting to see is if we get a convex type of organization building on top of that. That is basically rewarding their users to vote for them to get the funding. So it can be like very interesting from a tokenomics perspective, I think also.
And if
So
and
that's
if
kind of the
builders,
first, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, thanks. And if builders want to start exploring that, what would be their first steps after you do the massive launch you're about to do?
So yeah, for the builders, their goal is basically to get people to vote for them. This is how they get funding. And the cool thing is the more an app is successful, the more they will have governance tokens for themselves and to distribute to their own users. Meaning that the more an app is successful on the network, the more it will accumulate governance power and funding power over the network. And because they get some, so the governance token is called karma, because they get some karma, and because also their own users get karma because they are using it, they kind of have a strong incentivization to like maximize their funding by telling everyone, hey, look, like vote for us, please, because this is how, as an app, we are going to go. So I think it's going to be like a very interesting set of like dynamics going on between the apps on one side, the liquidity provision on the other side, but it's a net positive for the builders because this is how they will get access to continuous funding, and where the community is actually going to decide who gets the funding, and the apps are an app that is getting traction on the network will get access to funding. That's kind of the main rule we have is we want to allow a lot of different apps to actually get access to that. And so yeah, there's like a lot of incentivization I think going on that is going to be from a yield also like a yield farming perspective. I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
And you mentioned already the overall status ecosystem and Institute of Free Technology. What's your relations to the latter, and could you elaborate a little bit on the former?
Yes, of course. So the easiest way to see it is Status was created in 2017, and then they grew into multiple different projects because the goal was to build privacy first, global scale communication. And so it went through, we need a messaging system. So what is going to be the messaging system with end-to-end encryption? Then it started as Whisper from the Ethereum community, and it evolved as Waku. And so now Waku is actually building that kind of chat system, if you want. We were like, all right, we also need some type of storage system. And because users are going to send messages, they're going to send potentially pictures, like any normal network. So you need to have storage somewhere. But it needs to be censorship resistant, it needs to be sustainable, decentralized, and so on. So we started building Codex. And then, yeah, we need a wallet, so that's kind of status wallet, but we probably need to have more security than just a mobile wallet or like a web or like desktop wallet. So we started creating the key card, which is a hardware wallet, form of a card. It's like very cool to sign because you have shell that is a nice little kind of a POS, like a point of payment, right? But it takes QR codes, and so you can sign in like click click. It's very very easy, very user friendly. Um, and then we started also building for the network states, and that's kind of I think a big direction of the organization is to go towards building uh, nationwide or nation proof in some way operating systems where anyone can have censorship resistant and private networks where the execution is as decentralized as possible. And so that is what Nomos is building at the moment. And also, I mean, yeah, you need to have clients to support the Ethereum ecosystem. So we developed Nimbus. And Nimbus started as a consensus client for Ethereum, and now it's also launching an execution client. And the goal is that they will also offer a linear stack specific client where we will be able to run Nimbus on Solidus Network. And so, as you can see, there's like a lot of projects that kind of started to appear along just because we wanted to like realize that vision. And the main issue is like how do we actually build towards that? So as of now, the best way to represent the organization is on one side you have Logos, which is building the Logos core, so the messaging system, the storage system, the execution system. And then on the more customer-facing part, we have Status, and there's a Status app, which is a wallet. It's also you have communities on it, so kind of a Discord competitor, but of course like decentralized and so on. And then you have Status Network, and the way we want to position Status Network is it's the entry door, it's the bridge or the portal to the Logos ecosystem. And Status app is the kind of customer facing, like the UI part of it, if you want. And so this is what we're building towards. And that's why also at the technical level, we are also making decisions now that are going to be very impacting in the future. Is that, for example, the choice of DA. So where do we post our blobs? Where do we post our data from the rollup? And so, yeah, we are right now we're posting on Ethereum. We're probably we currently like considering other DAs like AgenDA, Celestia, but Nomos inside is also building their own DAs. So we're also potentially targeting to move towards that or have like kind of a double posting. This can be also very interesting to have that kind of two a bit like Startnet is doing between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Have kind of that kind of idea where we post data on like two different networks.
And if we look into the stack selection for the network that you've chosen, you mentioned Lineo already. It's not an easy choice these days to choose the right stack. So could you elaborate a little bit? I have maybe some specific questions, but I think you openly will cover most of them. Could you elaborate a little bit? How did the choice fall into Linea's basket, so to say?
Yeah, so I think it was a few months of due diligence that I went through last year, where the goal was to identify what is a stack that, and I'm going to give you like high level of the requirements that we had, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, it needs to be open source. It needs to be EVM equivalent. We shouldn't have to pay a tax to use it. We have a high performance focus. So without like whether in terms of like speed of transaction, so like block times, but also TPS, but also costs, and have a way to evaluate if the team has a strong view about performance in the future. Um, uh, and another idea, I mean, requirements was it needs to have a strong opinion on decentralization. And it needs to be a stack we can build on and be um, participant into the ecosystem and not just like we're using a stack and that's it. And so when you like just do all that one by one,
Mm.
you you end up with like two stacks. It's pretty easy. So
Yeah.
of course, one of the reasons we didn't go with the OP stack, and I think I mean they're doing a great job. Of course, like
Yes.
they're a net positive for the ecosystem. But the way I mean the deal was pretty simple. You either adopt a stack and you pay the tax, or you're going to do it on your own. Will not really support you, and you'll not be part of the super chain.
Mm.
Um, which I mean, I think that's fine. It's a good way to like try to build again like public funding, right? It's kind of the
Mm.
idea also behind that is to be able for um, optimism and the OP stack to redistribute part of the value generated. So I think it's good. It's kind of a interesting system, but for us it didn't work. We wanted to have like full ownership over any revenue streams to
Mm.
make sure that we can
Mm.
maximize the way we see the value redistribution. And so it was like, um, then you had kind of Arbitrum, of course, but Arbitrum is very focused on their L3s, their orbits, and so on. They're not really focused on like having all the L2s being Arbitrum.
Mm.
And for us, it was actually a focus is like we want to be an L2. We want to have an execution on Ethereum, not on like another chain that is like a to which we need to trust because we need to be sovereign. That's
Mm.
the thing,
Mm.
right? We need to have as much control over the revenue stream as possible. So we need to be an L2 and less dependencies, of course, on other ecosystem. And then we basically were so of course at that time zk Sync was not EVM compliant. So
Mm.
super happy that they released their new compiler as well. Solex, I think it's pretty good. But yeah, it's good that there are no EVM equivalent.
Mm.
Um, then we were left with basically Linear and Scroll.
Mhm.
And originally, Linear was not open source when I started to do my research. So I basically ruled them out. I was like, oh, that's my first requirement. They're not complying with it. It's done.
Mm.
Um, and then I actually met them in Bangkok.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, like a year ago. Um, and this is where we basically started to get into it and be like, all right, so we are going to open source. We want to decentralize. All right, fine. So how is it going to work?
Mm.
And we hit it up pretty well. And so we ended up going with Linear because we see a strong alignment between all of our requirements that are listed and at the same time what they want to build. They want to build an ecosystem around the Linear stack, and it's
Mm.
very hard to build that alone, of course.
Mm.
And so they were like super happy to have a partner that is going to be here to help them develop new features, new modules for that chain that are going to push the ecosystem forward. And so yeah, we were like super happy with the partnership with Linear, and it's going to be very interesting moving forward to see how the ecosystem evolves. There's a lot of news that are going to come out
Mm.
this week and the next, and around how basically Staris is going to be a steward into the Linux ecosystem, and we are going to help them um, with other organizations, like OG organizations in the space, to again, it's all about public funding, right? We have like a strong view towards this. We think it aligns very well with the Ethereum ecosystem and the needs of the ecosystem. So we want our entire stack universe to work towards that. And each chain is doing its own individual job, but also together as an ecosystem, we kind of want to move forward with that.
Mm. 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 So it seems like it's not just partnership; it's a proper deep relationship you're establishing with Linea, really, from what you describe. And also,
Yeah,
it seems
exactly.
like it was not on your list of requirements, but you got a very nice bonus to have a ZK technology available to you whenever needed.
Sorry, I didn't get the last question.
Yes, sorry. I also realized that it doesn't seem to be on your initial list of requirements, but you also got a ZK technology available to you at your disposal whenever you really need it. Do you have any plans to utilize some of the ZK features in future, or do you think it's maybe too early to talk about this now?
So the very interesting part where we sit at the moment is I personally always wanted to work on ZK technologies because I think it's the future. This is going to be how a lot of things settle
Yep.
because it's the most resource efficient way to do it. And so I was very happy when we actually ended up on a ZK EVM stack as the main partner because then it unlocks a bunch of things. So the obvious first thing it unlocks is we don't have the 7-day withdrawal period, right? Because it's a validity proof. As long as it's valid, we can withdraw. So that first, it kind of enables a lot of things in terms of liquidity sharing and so on. The second part is performance. So I think this is a part that people are kind of missing at the moment with the ZK VM debate. Is that a ZK VM will, because it will want to be as generalist as possible, then the proof execution will just be more costly. Versus if you have a purpose-built environment, and on our side, it's a ZK EVM, right? It's built and it's optimized so that the EVM actually works well and gets proven with like the minimum amounts of resources needing. And the gain of performance that the Linea team is working at the moment is going to be like pretty interesting, right? We're talking about minimum 10x or even 100x improvements. And if you compare that to the road that the more generalist DK VMs are taking, they will never get there. And I think you mentioned like ZK technologies in general. We haven't talked about the spam protection yet, right?
That was
And I
actually my
think this is
next
a very
question, because yeah, we can loop into this straight away. Please talk a little bit about this, but also specifically, since you're already starting, I wanted to know as much as you can share on how you build this spam protection mechanism, whatever you can tell to the audience, because of course Gasless is best user experience, but it comes with a little bit of an issue with spam protection. So how did you deal with that?
Yes. So the main issue with Gasless, as you mentioned, is the spam. And the gas on blockchains was, so initially it's made as a way to generate revenue and ensure the security of the network. But then on L2s, it kind of loses a bit its sense because it's mostly just a way to first make some revenue. But if you look at any chart from like literally any L2, it's going down. And the thing is like the gas on Ethereum, because the L1 is scaling, then every L2 is going to be fighting for like sub-cent optimization. And is it really worth it in the end? Like you're fighting for a decreasing revenue, and no one is going to win with this game. You're going to be pricing as close as the L1 price as you can. Yeah, that's not a very interesting business model. So we kind of look at, okay, there is the revenue part, but of course the main benefit from gas costs and the reason why no one has actually gone natively gasless before is because it protects against spam. If you have a free network, you can basically loop ETH with like a very small script, and you're going to ruin the entire network. And so this is exactly what we are trying to build. And it's a very interesting engineering problem that started mostly as a research part. So inside IFT, which is kind of the general umbrella of status and logos that I mentioned before, you have a lot of research departments, in particular VAC and the Zero Knowledge team, that are working on applied problems for Waku, which is the messaging network. Because Same problem. If you have a messaging network that you can just like send message for free, it's not going to work in the end. You're going to get spammed. So you need to have some form of spam protection going on. And so they worked on. So it's an implementation called RLN. So rate limiting nullifier. And the idea is just to say we have a way to count how many transactions a user is doing, and based on the behavior, we can decide whether we let them continue to it because they're still within their quota or their throughput, or we need to stop them because they are just sending too many messages to the system, or in our case, they're just making too many transactions on the L2. And the way it works is that we need to generate a proof that the user still has the right to do that. And this is where we use ZK. So the first implementation will be a bit lighter in the sense that the full RLN implementation is also focused on privacy. So you have like a lot of kind of built-in features that at the moment are not the most important for the Gasless implementation. But then when we move more towards privacy, we'll probably integrate those features down the line, where basically the user can generate a proof that he or she they haven't still gone over their limit. Post that proof, and then the sequencer will be like, all right, so you can make a transaction, go ahead. And this is a very elegant way to actually prevent spam. The main issue is like, okay, how do you get those tiers, right? And so we thought about that. And the main issue, of course, is we need to give the right to users to do a lot of transactions on the network is if they are actually bringing value to the network. And so we need to measure how users are actually providing value to that network. And it shouldn't be transferable, right? Because I mean, I can start farming the network and then I send you my points or whatever, and then suddenly it's like you have been here the whole time. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be soulbound. It needs to be non-transferable. And so this is how we came up with Karma. So Karma is a non-transferable ERC20 that is attached to your wallet. And the more good you provide for the network, the more power over the network you get. So it's kind of the whole karmic thing, right? And so that's kind of the idea behind it is, for example, staking SNT, which is a liquid token, provides some karma because we know that this is directly providing value to the ecosystem. And so this way you earn your first karma. But it's also a Sibyl protection system because it has a cost. You need to have some SNT and then stake it to be able to earn that governing power and those free transactions over the network. Other ways to do it is just to bridge some yield-bearing assets, so ETH or some stablecoins. Another way is to use apps. So if you use apps and we can see that there are actually user involved in that, then you get karma. And so you get more transactions for free. And so we have that kind of tier system that we're working on where you can go up in levels if you want. And the higher level you go, you have a higher throughput of free transactions. And so the idea is to find the right scale so that we can have and this is also one of the kind of apps, you mentioned apps at the beginning, right? And I kind of want to look back to that at some point, is because of the free transactions, we can get very interesting apps, in particular in DeFi, to be developed on the network. And of course, those apps need to have a massive amount of karma so that they are able to use the network a lot for free. And so to get that karma, they need to be providing some value to the ecosystem. And because you have that kind of interesting loop here, we think that we can actually have symbiotic relationships between apps and the network and not extractive relationships.
Yes, this is a beautiful concept, honestly, because I can clearly see the vision already of the future where it becomes more less cluttery with all the information, and less like the motivation will be correct. The motivation will be right to get the karma, and that's why I guess you specifically got into this philosophical part of things to really embrace what creates good deeds. No, this is fantastic. Like in math, for instance, when you see the conclusion of some equation and it just beautifully concludes the whole of the math that was happening there before. And I think your concept is pretty much like that. You went through the weeds of all of the complexity and you came up with a very beautiful concept. I love that, honestly. Interesting. Listen, we talked about most of the tech of yours, but let's give people also, we'll make a clip out of it, 3 major reasons, and we can come up with them after all the conversation we already had. 3 major reasons to use Status Network.
3 major reasons to use Status Network. All right. So come for the gaslessness and stay for the funding. I think this is the best way to put it. Yeah, we want to have a very easy introduction to Web3 or crypto or like being on chain. I think this is the first value we aim at providing. And in particular, so we have a big community in Korea, right? And in general, in Korea, the users are mostly sticking to centralized exchanges. They're not really exploring apps that are like somewhat more decentralized. They're not necessarily bridging to any network. So they're kind of staying into the centralized exchanges, which I think, I mean, it's fine, right? But it's good for them, I think, to start exploring a bit what's behind that and what can be done in other settings. But of course, if you ask people like that, and I think this is not just in Korea, right? There is a massive, if you look at kind of the order of magnitudes of people using crypto, we are not a lot of people on chain. Like, yes, you have millions of wallets and everyone is blasting millions of accounts. But the reality is like the number of people that are actually doing on-chain transactions, even every week, it's not that high. It's like 10 to 100K people probably. Even if you include all the meme coin traders on Solana, right? You're still at 100, 200 people tops. But if you look at how many people actually own crypto, this is like in the tens or hundreds of millions. And so we're like, I'm pretty sure there's like a scale here that we can actually take some of those users and be like, all right, those are like your 3 first steps on chain. You're going to first claim a name on on ENS. Then you're going to get a nice NFT in your wallet. Then we're going to give you your first dummy tokens to go play some games with it. And then you're going to stake. You're going to securize a network, and learn what that means. And so try to get someone from like crypto holder in a centralized exchange to validating Ethereum natively on your own stuff. It's like, yeah, there's a long way there. So one objective I'm giving to my team now, and I'm going to try to work as hard as I can towards that, is providing staking in 3 clicks. Like, I want people to be able to actually stake some SNT to secure the network against spam in 3 clicks. So how do we do that? We need to build like an optimized pipeline for that. And so the moment you ask people to pay for gas, even if it's like 0.001 cent, they will still have friction. They will still have a barrier. They will need to understand what is gas. How do I get it? Oh, I'm bridging SNT, but I need to bridge ETH also? Oh my God, why? And what is ETH, by the way?
Yeah.
So yeah. So the main step is you're just adding friction here. You're just adding like a lot of complexity that users need to understand first to actually be able to perform the steps that they want. So first, you ask for 3 things, right? First is the gaslessness. It opens up a lot of different use cases and onboarding we're thinking games, we're thinking social apps, we're thinking, of course, DeFi for more advanced users, but also like earn DeFi yield in 3 clicks. Like there is no app right now where you can open it and in like 2 or 3 clicks already be able to have a decent yield on your stablecoin. They all go through like a bunch of things to get you there. But we think that we can have a decentralized, uh, non-custodial, and very user-friendly way to do it. And that will be better than what centralized exchanges could ever provide. Because again, we will just take like a very small cut for our operating purposes,
Yeah.
with the goal of redistributing most of it to the network. First thing. Second thing, the funding. I think it's going to be very interesting from a funding perspective because it's going to allow a lot of dynamics between the different apps that are going to be competing in different categories, right? So, like, do you want to encourage more a decentralized exchange or like a stablecoin provider or like an NFT marketplace and so how do you rate them one against each other and in the value they provide to the ecosystem? So that's going to be very interesting from a user perspective if they want to get involved, but also, and that's actually my third point, is from a yield farming perspective. So it's always kind of a weird topic for L2s to be discussing yield farming because it's a reality, everyone does it, but we don't really talk about that much because it's seen as, oh, they're extractors. They're just like mercenary capital coming to take our yield and then let's leave and go to another like new ecosystem, farm them, and so on. But because most of the yield associated with the network is on governance over the network, which is non-transferable, then we are like, oh, actually, please come do farm us. We, again, want to have a very good relationship with you because if you farm the network, it means that you're basically providing yield and funding apps on the network. So yes, of course, please do it. If you do it for 1 month, it's okay, sure. But then the problem of those type of investors or farmers is that they need to have liquid returns, right? If you provide just them with just a non-transferable token, they'll be like, all right, well, how do I make money out of that? Because that's my main. I'm not doing it for altruistic purposes. I'm here to make money. So how do we make sure that these type of users are actually having something that makes sense for them? And this is how we came up with the whole native app concepts. The native apps are basically the second big revenue stream of Stardust Network. The first one being the native yield coming from the bridge, and the second one is fees on the native apps that are deploying on the network. And each of those native apps have a token. And we basically do a token swap with them, where we give them some karma to have governance over the network, and they give us a part of their token supply. And the goal for us as a network is to keep, let's say, 2/3 of the tokens they give us in our kind of decentralized treasury. It's kind of like the DAO. Like we will see how we actually implement that so that users can probably vote on it at some point. But the idea is like we keep and we vest the main part of the token allocation they give us. And then we have another part that is reserved for the community. And the goal is basically to redistribute those extra tokens as incentives for Karma holders. And so this way, Karma basically becomes a type of index on the ecosystem. If you own Karma, you're going to get exposed to all the tokens of all the native apps or important apps that are building on the network. And so it helps with discovery of new tokens. It also helps with actual incentivization of each project. And it helps the entire ecosystem because you're like basically distributing your holder base and you have more people that are part of your community. And so, yeah, I think there's like a lot of dynamic here that we want to target every type of users that will bring value to the ecosystem. And yield farmers are one of them. and we want to also have kind of a product for them that they can actually use.
Awesome. Listen, I have a couple of more questions. I see that you're fired up and you can talk a little bit, a lot more about the project, and you're very passionate about this. And no wonder, because again, the mechanisms I think you're establishing are quite extraordinary and needed now, because not only you can solve the problems of your own business and community, but also by doing that you can engage wider community and bring more people into crypto, which is of course is what we're all of us are here for. And you're quite close to it. Mindful of the time, do you have a couple of more minutes, like 5-10 minutes, or do you have a hard stop? Okay, brilliant. Let's do this, because I have like I got fired up. I had another question to ask, formal one, and then we were about to close, but I'm also interested now, very much so, and I want to ask you a challenging question. Can somebody wreck or abuse the system? Like, say, I don't know, I'll give you a stupid example, maybe it doesn't really make sense at that moment, but let's say Vatican sells all the gold that they own, and then in its value they stake it in ETH on their network, and they have, I don't know, will they have the biggest karma? Will they manage to influence the network in the biggest way? Or like, could there be any kind of imbalance that would affect the system negatively or something? And of course, this thing will never happen, but just have to ask a challenging question too.
Yeah, it's a fun question actually, and I think you mentioned balance. This is what we are striving for. The goal of karma is that the way it's minted corresponds to what the network needs most. And the network will never need just capital. It will need builders. It will need engaged community. It will need users. If you want to build a chain that is only for DeFi and only for purely capital motivated individuals, then yeah, probably you can leave the whole governance of the network to whoever pays the most and be like, yeah, if you want to have control of the network, just pay for it and I'll get it. You will get it. But here the idea is that a huge chunk of the karma minted is going to be allocated to app builders and protocols and games developers and a bunch of like use cases that we really want to see happening on the network. We really want to give those guys a way to kind of build on it. But at the same time, we don't want to push too much for like the financial aspect. And so it's kind of a very interesting balance. And this is where the karma also is going to be interesting as a way to accumulate voting power. We have that kind of division between there is one side of the yield that is going to liquidity providers. So basically, if you bridge a lot of ETH and DAI and you stake them into the ETH DAI pool on the native DEX, you will earn most of the tokens. And then suddenly, like, yeah, you have super high APY and you're happy. Yeah, but it means that you're actually taking a part of the yield that could have funded a bunch of other projects that in the long term will be more beneficial for the ecosystem than just providing liquidity during a period of time.
That's pretty
So
much.
it's a really matter of balance. Yeah, it's a matter of balance of like how do we attribute and how do we allocate the karma. So initially it's going to be a very somewhat centralized way to do it. Like our team is going to assess, all right, how do we do it and like who gets the most power now. But our goal is to get to a point where it's actually the community that is going to decide entirely on those parameters. And big karma holders will have a way to have real influence about how is the yield distributed between the different section. And if the financial guy wins in the end, then it will be a good battle. But I don't think they will win because it's not a war. The goal is to build an ecosystem that works together. So we need some capital, but we also need we definitely need builders.
Yeah. Understand. That makes total sense to launch the system. And also, if you look at the like yogic philosophy, it's cosmic consciousness who apparently distributes karma, right? So there has to be an entity of sorts. But great, and it's like it makes total sense because it's like it is in it's exactly like it is in real life. Money can solve a lot, but they can solve everything. You also have karma you have to carry, and that makes total sense. Listen, last question I have to you is that all of that sounds like a beautiful project again, as I mentioned to you before. I wonder, how did Gateway help you to make it even better, or did it help you to overcome certain milestones, or what was the Gateway role in all of that? Because now, as we are talking, I'm quite excited about this, and I want to make sure that all of that is gonna go through as planned. But just 2 minutes brief, and then we can wrap this up.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, when we started to investigate on the linear stack, of course, one of the biggest questions was like, how do we run it? And so we looked in our own, um, we looked into our own way of operating systems, and we're like, no, we need like an enterprise grade solution that works now as fast as possible, and that we can rely on. And so we went through a lot of different providers, because now, I mean, there's a lot of providers in the market, and to find the right partner to build that on a new stack that has never been actually developed as a stack before, to be the first one to build a rollup is actually very hard. And so this is why, on our side, going with Gateway was in the end an evidence. They were the one that were able to provide the fastest way to go to the testnet, literally. And that we're wanting to learn a new stack and invest resources into getting to run it well and to automatize the way of running it. And so now we started with, for example, we started with a testnet, and now we're adding a Holeshki devnet on top of that. And this is kind of a natural relationship also that comes. We're like, okay, we're trusting them more, and so we want to make sure that we're able to expand our reliance on them, with the goal of course, at some point being able to decentralize also part of that stack. And the work that Gateway is doing is actually very beneficial for that, because like, how do we run a lot of different iterations of linear? And that's definitely very positive for the ecosystem too.
Yeah, thanks. We have this problem that sometimes when we put forth the technical proposal, people might not even believe that this is true, but you're one of the witnesses that it's all correct, and it can be done quickly and efficiently, and with a lot of support. But thanks very much. It's been a pleasure, true pleasure talking to you. Let's do this once again whenever you have milestones. I would love to help you to unfold these milestones to the wider audience. And yes, have a fantastic weekend ahead. It's been a really good talk. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you, Dennis, and talk to you soon, I guess.
Thanks. Okay, so I